Hello, and welcome back to this brand new episode of the Silmarillion Film Project. I'm your co-host, Dave Kale, and I am joined, as always, by the Tolkien Professor, Corey Olson, and the Tolkien Maven, Trish Lambert. And we are very excited. We're on, this is episode 5, I believe, and we're talking the Marathon today. A lot of some politics, right?
When people, for the poor people that are asynchronously listening, and they turn on the podcast and Dave is like giggling while he does the opening.
Yes.
You know, I mean, isn't it sad?
I want them to feel like they're missing out.
Right.
We were joking around before he started, and that's terrible. So, you know, the cure for that, you got to listen live. That's
It's
it.
true.
Right. Listen to us live.
It's true.
Right. So politics this episode.
That's right.
Yeah.
Politics this episode.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at the really, I think this is kind of the heart of that really complex Noldor Sindar, both like interpersonal and like political and intercultural kind of drama of this season. So these two episodes are really pivotal for that. Plus, we've got lots of romance in this episode too, as we're
what is that? A high whatchamacallit factor? What is it for romance? There's a movie factor, isn't there? That, like, you know, for chicks.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh, I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, somebody will remember. But anyway, so it's like a high score for like, you know, women will like it.
You know, people are probably experiencing like very severe withdrawal on their sort of historical fantasy, politics, and romance.
Yeah.
They've got no more Game of Thrones now.
Oh yeah, for those listening, you know, later on down the line, we're right around the time that Game of Thrones ended. So yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we should be careful to place things in context. So when people are listening to us 4 years from now, the episode hasn't gone stale. But yes, we're right around the end of Game of Thrones. People are going through withdrawal. For those of you who are listening in real time, if you're feeling that withdrawal, this is the place to come.
This is an excellent episode for us to be working on. Yeah, exactly.
We will deliver your politics and romance, and we take the fantasy elements seriously.
Exactly.
Rather than Gur Martin. Well, it wasn't even Gur Martin for the last season, I don't think. But anyway.
Yeah, he's free of blame now.
That's right. That's right. I bet actually, you know, he's been, feeling kind of smug about the response to the end of the series. Actually. I don't know.
Yep.
Yes, Aslan's Compass asks if this is a kissing episode. Yes, this is definitely a kissing episode. Well, at least in one regard, we're gonna have some mushiness, but I think no smooching yet in the Galadriel and Celeborn relationship. But
would it be interesting if we actually find out that elves like rub noses or rub ears or something instead of kiss? I mean, you know, we shouldn't take it. We shouldn't take it for granted that they actually kiss, right? So, you know. Anyway, that is a rabbit hole we don't want to go down. Oh, Corey's thinking about it.
Yeah,
there goes the eyebrow.
But you're right. You're right. I think we should probably not at this point be thinking about, like, you know, the erotic gestures of elves.
Yes.
Right now, but
not right now.
Yeah.
Maybe later. Or a bonus episode. Marie, let's add that as an episode. The erotic gestures of elves at the end of the season.
I'm not sure we want to do that, actually, but we'll see.
It would be rated E.
No, it just wouldn't.
For elves.
E for elves. Okay. All right.
It's gonna be a good episode today, folks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, so quick announcements, of which there's really only one, and that is Mythmoot. We are a month away from Mythmoot, and so I'm in full Mythmoot anticipation mode, and it's really exciting. So, of course, we are down to the last week now. Next Friday is when registration is scheduled to close for live attendance at Mythmoot. So I hope if you'll be able to join us, that you'll be able to register within this next week so that you can come and join us. Really great crowd coming this year. Excited to see folks. And Of course, this year we also have the Mootcast option. For those of you who aren't able to make it to Virginia, you can still attend live every session and, in fact, get archived video recordings of all of the sessions, even all the ones that are going on at the same time, so that you don't have to choose anymore and you can hear everything. And, of course, Mootcast is automatically included, like access to that recording archive is included with registration to MythMoot, any kind of registration. Like even if you only come for one day, you can get the Mootcast archive for the whole thing. Anyway.
And yes, Ellen, Mootcast will be available asynchronously, right?
Absolutely.
It is available. Yeah, it's archived, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's available asynchronously. The one kind of, so the reason I paused, the one proviso, you can only sign up for Mootcast up until the end of MythMoot. It's an attendance thing. Right. So you can't come in like 2 years from now be like, hey, can I like buy access to the recordings? No, we can't do that.
But if you buy it before the end of the
exactly up
event,
through
then you
Sunday
have
the 30th. Exactly
right.
Through Sunday the 30th. So like if still like the middle of the afternoon while we're all hugging and saying goodbye to each other, you can still order the Mootcast awesome. and get access to the full recording.
God, you and I talked about this so long ago, but the time had not come yet. And this is really exciting. By the way, I don't know if this is good or bad. It might be bad, but I'm going to be there. So if that's a draw, but also might keep people from not coming. So I don't know.
No, it's one of my main draws this year. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again there. Yeah.
And I'm just going to kick back and relax and have a good time. Yep. My first MythMoot, I can do that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's going to be great. So yes, Mootcast will definitely be, if you sign up for Mootcast, you don't have to attend anything live. You can just, watch all the recordings. And if you have Mootcast, we're not going to make those unavailable at any point. Like you will have permanent access to the archive of videos for the rest of your life. But we just won't be able to sell access to it after the fact. Anyway, so that's how it's that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be really fun. So, all right, that's it. Oh wait, no, I know there's another thing. There is another thing related to MythMoot, and that is the preliminary schedule has been posted, so you can begin to see like for the sessions and stuff. All of this is on the webpage signumuniversity.org/MythMoot, so you can get all of the information there. All right, cool. And I was going to say this at the end, but actually I should say this at the beginning also to make sure that everybody notices and remembers, in case people have tuned out or fallen asleep or whatever by the end. Next week, so the scheduled next session we're due for Friday the 14th of June. I'm going to be traveling on the 14th of June, so I'm not going to be able to do that, which means as usual we're going to need to bump it up or back. And I think we're going to bump it up, actually. So we're going to plan to have the next session next Friday on June 7th. So we'll have 2 weeks in a row of Film here coming up, and then we'll have a little bit of a gap. But we will be doing Film again next week. So just to let you know. Okay, and as I'll remind you again at the end, but I wanted to make sure to mention that at the beginning. Okay, so on to the business of the day, which is episodes 5 and 6. So episode 5, there's a lot going on. We talked a lot about the Marathonathon last time in our creative discussion session when we were talking about like what kinds of entertainments are going on and sort of doing some work on Elvish culture and thinking about that. So here's a list of potential stuff that could be happening here in the Marathonathon. Let's look at the big picture, right? Turgon is hosting it at Nevrast. So we have the establishment of Turgon's court. One of the most important elements for this, because of course Turgon, in film time, as far as like actual time on screen, Turgon is going to be in Nevrast for like a heartbeat. Right? I know he's there for a while, but again, as far as the appearance on screen, we're not going to be in Nevrast very often. I'm really excited to have the Merith Adderthad in Turgon's court in Nevrast, so that we have lots of associations with it when we get to Tuor down the road, right? In several years. Because when Tuor comes to... So we want to have, when Tuor comes to Nevrast and finds the armor that Turgon has left for him at Olmo's instructions, we should remember that place from the Merith Adderthad, right? This is the scene. So like this episode is what we're going to have associations with when we get to the Tuor moment. So I want to be kind of thinking about that. So yeah, that's what I'm working on, thinking about how we can prepare. And it's not like it's the whole point of this episode. Obviously, there's a lot that's going on here for its own sake. But in the back of my mind, one of the things that I want to prepare for is the coming of Tuor later on. So, for instance, how do we want to since I'm talking about that, let's talk about that right now. How do we want to handle obviously there's not going to be, it's not there already, right? The armor that he's going to eventually leave for Tuor. Where should it be? And what should be there? I mean, we need to do, I feel like we need to do something to kind of draw attention to that location. We can't just have the armor in a spot that was empty before. There should be some significance to the physical place where Tuor finds his armor, and we need to establish that significance now in this episode. You see what I mean? So yeah. Okay. So yeah, Nick, exactly. The festivity, well, I don't know about most of the festivities, because especially last time, I mean, I have to admit, actually, one of the things that I think, reflecting back on our discussions from last time I was thinking almost entirely of outdoor activities, right? We were talking about things like athletic competitions and stuff like that. But so a lot of that stuff obviously is outdoor stuff, and there's going to be a great deal of things that are happening outside. But there definitely needs to be some indoor stuff, especially like the high feast and stuff. So there does need to be a throne room. I know that that's where it's stated, but again, where? What is the significance? Not the significance of the room, but the significance of the specific location. So yeah. Just to start that off simply, where is he going to put the armor in relationship to the throne? Should it stand at the right-hand side of the throne? Is there a way that we can draw attention to, the and what is the throne like? Exactly. I want to be thinking about this. What kind of throne does Turgon have in Vinumar?
Probably not one forged from the swords of his enemies. Probably
not. Would it be stone, set in the wall?
Seems that would probably be appropriate for, given kind of the setting and how the place was created. Is it something that was there when he got there, or did he build it?
He built it.
Okay.
He built it. So what
I think forged out of the stone.
Forged out of the stone?
That's my first reaction, but don't take it seriously.
Well, especially since, when Tuor comes to Tuor needs to be able to obviously see that it's a throne room, right? I mean, he has to know that he is in the throne room of the old king who lived here, right? Not necessarily knowing exactly what it is or who it is. And so if it were not a stone throne, if it were, a throne made of like precious metals and wood or something like that, then they'd have taken it with them, presumably, to Gondolin, right? But if it's carved out of stone, and attached to the walls and floor, they're going to leave that behind, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's pretty easy. Nick, yeah, that's a great thought. That's the kind of thing that that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about, right? What if the throne room is open with a balcony view of the sea? Yeah, I'm trying to picture this scene clearly in my head, but it's not just about picturing it so that it looks cool, though that's also important. I'm thinking about the symbolism here, and in particular, I'm thinking about the character of Turgon that we have been building. I want to make sure that we're consistent with what we are connecting with Turgon as we move forward. Yeah, and that's why, by the way, I'm not only going by the description. I mean, I'm using the description that we get in Unfinished Tales. I know we get a detailed description of this in Unfinished Tales, but we are developing the character of Turgon in a particular way, which is not alien to the way that Tolkien depicted Turgon, but which is more detailed than what he gave us about Turgon, and different in some ways. And so I want to be thinking about our story and the ways in which we can evoke the things that we want to evoke in our story. But again, that's why I mentioned the throne room and everything, because it's based on that. And I want to think about the reason I say the hanging of the armor. I know in Unfinished Tales it's described as hanging above the throne, and I like that, but I'm not sure about it. I'm not. I want to make sure it fits and it makes sense, and again, especially in the context of the Merith Atherthad and what we're describing happening in the Merith Atherthad, right? If we could have some particular associations with it. The connection with the sea, Nick, like the direction you're thinking, is exactly one of the kinds of things that I'm kind of thinking about. Tony says he always imagines it at the right hand of the marble throne. I like it being at the right hand because, again, that's kind of where Tuor is going to end up, right? So having the positioning of the armor, symbolically speaking, having it be above the throne, it's visually nice, but symbolically, I don't like it all that much because it seems to say something weird, like he's not above the throne, right? This is a gift from Ulmo, but it's a gift from Turgon too. And Aslan's Compass, yeah, it's also, how would he get it down? Yeah, I mean, he'd have to climb up onto the back of the throne to get it down. You could do that, but again, it's one of those things, Aslan's Compass, exactly as you're suggesting, it's one of those things that I think works better in prose than it would work on screen. I don't know. So, yeah. The Noldor do like to work in stone, so having the throne be of stone seems fine. Do they also leave a ladder? Yeah, well, exactly. Well, see, no, Ellen, it's not there already. We're not going to put the armor there. He won't have he'll only place the armor before, presumably only forge the armor after Ulmo tells him to and gives him the measurements, right? And that's going to be significantly later. So there's no armor there now. That's the issue. That's the kind of the fun challenge, right? Is that we're going to have this, we need to establish this space and the significance of this space. Turgon is going to be, we're going to have some kind of ceremony, right? Presumably. This is going to be one of the places where we can show, one of the first places really, that we can show the High King in action, right? What it means to be the High King and how the High King interacts with other kings, right? So, having Fingolfin come and Turgon is there on his throne in his court and seeing the two of them interact as he there can be even some kind of ceremony, right? As he sort of officially installs Turgon and blesses Turgon's reign here in Nevrast and everything. All of that, I think, gives us an opportunity actually to do that. But if we're going to do that kind of a ceremonial scene, some kind of actual ceremony, not just party, right, in the throne room, but some kind of actual ceremony, then the sort of the symbolic placement of things is actually really important, right? So a good question, Ellen, you had raised this question. What direction does the throne face? Does it face east or west, do we think? It could face... This is Turgon. It's got to face west, right? This is Mr. I'm making a gold and silver tree to recall the trees of the... I'm going to go to Gondolin and make as close a facsimile as I can to Valinor. Yeah, clearly it faces west, right? So it faces west, and then Nick having the kind of open balcony thing, right? So having like the western wall of the throne room be open, right? So that you have the sea, it opens out onto the sea, would seem to work. Is there any way, but again, this is Turgon we're talking about here. He would also be aware, wouldn't he, of their guilt? That is, his looking back towards the west has to be done in the knowledge that they're exiled, right?
Right.
It seems to me that the westward orientation of people like Turgon has to be done either in a spirit of almost defiance, right? In the sense of like, I know that you've kicked us out and you've said that we're not welcome, but I'm like focused entirely on Valinor anyway, or of repentance, right? Of penitence, I should say. That he, repents of the crimes that led them to be exiled, and that he is looking and hoping for reacceptance, right? And the mariners that he's going to send down the river to the sea later on is going to be sort of a more active campaign, right, of seeking forgiveness, of seeking permission. Aslan's Compass, I like this. Aslan's Compass is pointing out on the Twitch chat, there should be humility in Turgon's throne room, and I agree with that.
Yep.
So she's particularly suggesting his throne should be small. I like that. He should not have a grand and aggrandizing throne, and in particular, I think it shouldn't be very high, right? It shouldn't be like up many steps on a high dais. It should be a relatively small, it can be beautiful, right? But a relatively small stone seat, and one facing the west. So yes, that image of like the relatively small chair facing the very large, like whole wall missing, right? So, could make for a really nice kind of dynamic, right? Where it's like him sort of opening himself up to the west, right? And both looking out towards the west and sort of inviting. That's why, like, you get all the sea wind and everything coming in. The throne room is not going to be at all seasons the most pleasant place, right? But that's okay. I kind of like all of that. Hakan is suggesting a sunset. Yeah, we could do a sunset for some important scenes here. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's a good question, Ellen. Ellen is asking basically how much of Turgon's attitude toward, like, he certainly looks back to the West with regret, but how much remorse does he look back with? I think it's a really good question. For Turgon, obviously, the defining event, right, of recent history is the death of his wife. You know, he lost his wife in the crossing of the Helcaraxa. Remember that in season 3, and you guys will remind me if I'm not remembering this correctly, when we had the discussion among the people of Fingolfin and Finarfin who remained after the burning of the ships, right, when they realized they've been betrayed, we had their discussion, like their decision. Let's cross the Helcaraxa, right? And we were talking about the different reasons why they would cross the Helcaraxa. And if I remember correctly, the voice that we gave to Turgon in that debate was a more prophetic one, right? Where he had the sense, right? He had the conviction that it was important for them to do, like, they had a role to play in Middle-earth, like that they needed to be there. He was not motivated by, he was not part of the, let's go after Feanor and string him up crowd. He wasn't part of the, like, I'm super ambitious and I want to get my kingdom already, even if I have to walk to get there crowd. And, you know, Angrod being one of the spokesmen of the first one, Galadriel being the spokesman of the second group. He was, okay. Oh, Ellen, right. We had Elenwe persuading Turgon to cross, right? Marie's reminding me too. She saw hope for the future in Beleriand, right? So, yeah, we had Elenwe and Turgon have a private conversation about that as well. Yes, good. See, I was forgetting that. So what's his attitude towards that now? Now that Elenwe's dead? Clearly, the role that he, at least, has to play in Middle-earth is not panning out like he expected, right? Because his, you know, they crossed. Elenwe was one of the ones supporting the crossing, and she was killed in the crossing. So clearly he's got to have mixed feelings about that, right? So his longing for the West, his, like, I'm going to recreate the Blessed Realm to the greatest of my ability here in Middle-earth impulse is in part what? His grief processing that? His, like, an expression of, I wish I hadn't crossed the Helcaraxa? Right? I should have, like, Elenwe and I should have gone back to Valinor. But see, I got to be careful because grief and mourning among the elves, not the same as among humans, right? So he hasn't lost Elenwe in the same way that a human would have lost his spouse under those similar circumstances. He would still experience grief, obviously, but as we talked about when we discussed the kinslaying, grief among the elves is not exactly the same as grief among the... He would associate Middle-earth with sadness. Now, like, his whole Middle-earth career, the whole, like, whatever it is, whatever role he has to play in the future of Middle-earth and in the progress of Middle-earth is now being done without her and in separation from her. And although he may, you know, be confident that he is eventually going to be reunited with her, that is not how he planned it, right? He did not plan to play out this role in Middle-earth on his own. Yeah.
I guess the grief is more of a it's less a I'll never see you again type grief and more of a it's kind of a in the moment, like my experience of this moment isn't what I thought it would be.
Right. Exactly.
More focused on kind of the journey of getting there as opposed to the destination, I guess.
Exactly. Okay, but here's a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
And this is thinking about this in conjunction, Ellen, with your comment there. Do the exiles wonder whether or not there's going to be any, like, what's going to happen to them when they're killed now that they've been exiled? Are there going to be longer term consequences of that? I mean, surely there's going to be something that needs to happen, purgatorially speaking. But, like, could they be in doubt or dread lest they actually not go back to the halls of Mandos, whether something else happened to them? If their spirits are banished as their bodies have been banished, if they're, will their Feas not be welcomed back? Will they not go to the halls of Mandos in the normal way? Will they become, no, you're right, Nick. Mandos does promise that their spirits will return to him. So I guess Mandos kind of spoiled that one, right? Okay. Yeah. 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 But so their dread would be not lest they don't go to Mandos, but not knowing what's going to happen to them when they do go to Mandos. So Turgon could have some doubts about what's going to happen. Yeah. But again, as I say, it's not the same as the dynamics certainly are not the same as with mortals. And when I say the dynamics there, I just mean like the entire framework, it is impossible for death, even in Middle-earth, to mean the same thing for the elves as it does for humans, right? Because humans begin with the fundamental association that death means departure. Death means separation, some kind of like permanent separation, that when somebody you love dies, you have lost them. That's whereas elves, they don't have that framework. Like death is not departure. Death is not departure from Middle-earth, right? Death is not departure from Arda, I mean. That's not even what they associate death with. Like they would think it as a process. They would think about it. They would frame it completely differently. Death is not an end. There's no association of finality with death, because that's not how they're structured. That's not how they're set up. That's not how their relationship with Arda works. But again, there is the separation is nevertheless real, even if temporary, even if time, might not feel the same way to an elf as it does to a human. Being separated for millennia is still kind of noticeable. And what's more, as we said, what happens to you in the halls of Mandos is not necessarily desirable. And even when elves do return, they're changed. So, anyway, yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So Turgon's frame of mind, then. Back to Turgon's frame of mind. What would he be thinking? There'd be a temptation to bitterness. The kind of bitterness of like, I expected one thing and I've received something very different and very much worse, right? I was ready for hardship. I was ready for difficulty. When Elenwe and I came to Middle-earth, and like that the role we were meant to fulfill would be hard, even painful, right? We were prepared for that, but that the role that was set for me would be to lose her and be on my own and to raise our daughter myself. That's not what he was thinking, right? This is not what he signed up for. And his longing for the West, which is clear in all of his works, has to be, it seems. Do you think there's a kind of, well, no, not denial. That's not exactly what I mean. This sort of, I'd always thought about, the sort of Valinorian elements in Gondolin especially to be a kind of nostalgia, right? A kind of homage, right? Like, I want to do honor to, back home and recreate home here as much as I can in honor of the home that, in memory and longing for the home that I have lost. But I wonder if we might not see an additional or a different dynamic there as well, like a kind of alternative, like an almost, but not quite denial. Yeah, Hakan says it's a way to ease the pain, because you've got to think that, well, I don't exactly mean pretending he isn't in exile, but if in his heart what Turgon wishes most, like, that moment when Denethor, with cruel and crushing honesty, admits to Faramir that he wished that Faramir had gone instead of Boromir, so that Faramir had died and not Boromir, right? That, like, horrible, like, Faramir already pretty much knows that that's true, but, like, Denethor's confirmation of it is really, this terrible moment, right? But it's this moment of horrible and crushing honesty by Denethor, right? If Turgon had a similar moment of crushing honesty about what he wanted, what he wishes for, would what he wishes for be like that he had never come to, that he had just gone back with Elenwe to Valinor with Finarfin, right, to seek for forgiveness there? And therefore, would that, like, that sort of honest truth, which I think maybe he doesn't really express, be one of the main things that's therefore informing him as he's doing these, so that Gondolin becomes this, like, alternative Valinor, psychologically speaking, right? His attempt not to bring his home to Middle-earth, but, like, retreat from Middle-earth. Because see, the reason that I'm thinking this, right? Because it informs his isolationism then, right? I'm going to shut myself away from Middle-earth and pretend I'm going to create this, like, little fantasy blessed realm, right? And I'm not saying that he begins with that. I'm saying that that element is something that can become more and more pronounced as he's kind of slipping downhill, morally speaking, right? Spiritually speaking later on. I'm not saying that it's conscious, and it's certainly not explicit at the beginning. Yeah, exactly. I think you guys are seeing what I'm talking about. Yeah, Marie says it's a Valinor substitute for those who go to Gondolin. Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the reasons why they can convince themselves that it's enough, right? It's fine. They don't need anything. Right? They can just, when they get there to Gondolin, they can live in bliss in their own little isolated bubble. And, evil can't touch them because evil does not enter that valley. And, see what I did there? And they, and they don't need Valinor, right? Because they've got Gondolin. Yeah. And exactly, Ellen. So when he gets so when he's presented with the choice, right, the choice to leave Gondolin and enter the war, even with the promise that if he does, good things will happen, right? Not for him, probably personally, but, like, for the elves of Beleriand, he won't. He doesn't do it. And we'll get to that, like, exactly what the message of Ulmo is, which message of Ulmo do we want to send to Turgon? The message of the published Silmarillion, or the message of the Book of Lost Tales, or we can. That's a discussion for another year. But okay, so thinking about Turgon, therefore, in Vinyamar, means we have to think about Turgon. We have to think about Turgon in the very early stages of this. So his grief for his wife is still very fresh when he builds Vinyamar. Is there a statue of her in the throne room?
I would think yes.
Is she facing towards or away from the sea? How does she look? Happy? Joyful? Sad? Is he commemorating her happiness?
Wistful.
Is he wistful? Yeah. Yeah, good. Ellen was just asking the same question. Is he going to have a painting or carving of her, like to the left of the throne? See, Ellen, I love that idea. If we have the throne and the statue of Elenwe next to him, right, then the armor can be on the other side. Like, it can complement the statue, right, so that you have... Oh, that's perfect. Love that, right? The statue of Elenwe and Tuor's armor. So we've got like looking backwards and looking forwards. Oh no, that's it. That's perfect. Absolutely
I
love
like
that.
that a lot.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yes. Because in doing that, in telling him not only like the specs for the armor, but Olma will tell him where to put it, right? And in doing so, he's sending a message to Turgon himself, right? He wants Turgon to understand the symbolism of that placement, right? Oh yeah, no, that's very good. I like that a lot. Okay, yeah. Yes, statue. It would be a statue, right? Could be a painting, but I think statue is better. Statue's better, especially if we're gonna have the armor.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, Ellen, beautiful. No, that's great. That's even better. No, this is perfect. So, Turgon's throne, right? Turgon sits in his modest, humble throne, facing the west. Elenwe stands on his left, and Idril stands on his right. And in Idril's spot, the place where Idril used to stand, that's where Tuor's armor is going to be placed. So we have the juxtaposition of Idril and Tuor in the placement of the armor. So again, we have the foreshadowing of their joining, right? As well as that's really good. Like that a lot. And Ellen, great question. How does Idril feel about the memorial to her mom? Does she like it? Is she sad by it? Is she creeped out by it?
I would think she'd like it, and she would talk to it from time to time.
One of the things that I think we definitely want to show is Idril carrying on her mother's tradition for wisdom and insight, right? After all, of course, it's going to be Idril who is going to be the brains behind the escape from Gondolin, right? It is her wisdom and foresight that is going to lead very directly to anybody surviving the disaster of Gondolin. Yeah. And good, Haakon points out, remember that she almost died at the same time, right? So the memory of her mother's death would be doubly scarring. And in that circumstance, almost has to be some survivor's guilt there too, right?
I was just going to say that. Going to say that she would have survivor's guilt.
Yeah. So therefore, the sight of her mother's statue should fill her with sadness, right? Like a survivor's guilt kind of sadness. Like, it's a reminder that her mom died and she didn't.
There might be a character arc there where she moves through that in some way.
Yeah.
Just an idea for the script writers.
Yep. Certainly when we're doing, I think it's a season 5 question. We can come back because in season 5, we need to establish at the beginning of the Arathel story, we need to establish some inside Gondolin time, right? So Idril and Arathel, I think, should be close. And that would give us plenty of opportunity to show how Idril is coping right now. Now that we will have the adult Idril, right? We still have juvenile Idril, don't we? Is Idril still played by a girl here? I'm forgetting. No, she's an adult now. Okay, great. Okay, great. All right. So we have adult Idril already. Anyway, that's fine. Ellen, that's another really great thought. She's pointing out that we have to make sure not to make the statue of Elenwe too freestanding, or Turgon would certainly take it with him. It should be a relief carved into or out of the wall. I would think emerging from the wall, but still largely connected with the wall. So he'd leave it. And of course we can have, when we show the departure of the soon-to-be Gondolindrim out of Nevrast, we clearly are going to need a poignant scene, right, where Turgon is saying goodbye to Elenwe, right, to his statue of Elenwe there. He can commission one in Gondolin, but I wonder if he will. It's going to be different, right? It's going to be different. But wait, did we decide how he's depicted Elenwe? She's facing the west because she's to the side of his throne, right? Though she's going to be set back from it a little bit. How is she gesturing? Is she looking down? Is she looking out to sea? He would show her, he would want to show, is she looking up, perhaps? To sort of symbolize her wisdom and foresight, right? To kind of capture that. She could be looking aside at him so that he can make eye contact with her every time he looks up, which is a little creepy, but that could happen. She could be looking down as if in sadness, but I don't think he would show her looking sad. I mean, he would be sad, but I would think his impulse would be to capture her greatness, right?
I think she'd be looking just forward, straight ahead, like onward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Nick says, looking out to sea would seem out of character since we depicted her as wanting to go to Middle-earth. Yes, though Nick, having his depiction of Elenwe staring back west across the sea would be, or could be, right, a kind of at least subliminal, if not superliminal, expression of his own, like, wistful longing for that, not the return to Valinor, but the, like, do-over in Valinor, right? Yeah. Okay, but yes, I think that her standing with her hands by her sides, or maybe her one hand up, not quite in like the full teaching gesture, from medieval sculpture, but or from medieval iconography, but in like a kind of not a reaching out gesture, but a kind of
Well, if it's a relief from the wall, I would imagine you wouldn't really have an appendage coming out, would it? She'd be more like having her hand over her heart or something like that.
Well, I wasn't thinking
Maybe
necessarily like a full relief. Myself, I think I'm picturing a kind of like a statue emerging from the wall, right? It should be connected to the wall. But it wouldn't just, because if you think about it, if you're sitting in a throne, especially if your throne is set back against the wall, and the statue is like he'd be looking up at her ribs every time he'd turn to the side, right? So it would make a certain amount of sense to have her statue set back. But if she's a relief in the wall, then he'd have to crane all the way around to look at the wall, right? So I'm kind of thinking of a statue, but it's a statue sort of emerging from the wall. So like the back half of it is connected to the wall, so she's set back. But she is sort of a 3D statue coming out of the wall. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick is suggesting maybe she has her hand out, like as if her hand out to hold Turgon's hand, which does mean he could reach out and hold her hand from the throne. But again, maybe a little too,
that's a little creepy.
Little creepy, exactly. It would be. We don't want to make Turgon look too necrophiliac here. She could have her hand on the back of his throne. I kind of like that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
What about something that could be replenished, like a ewer or a vase or something, to where once a year, maybe there's some tradition where something gets put, flowers, or I don't even know what it would be. But in other words, there's a tradition in Gondolin that she's honored once a year in some way. Anyway, that just popped into my head.
Yeah, I wonder. We'll have to think about this. We'll have to think about this in connection with Gondolin when we get to Gondolin. I think we're really not going to do the details of Gondolin, of like what life is like in Gondolin, until the beginning of season 5. But when we get there, we'll think about this. I'm kind of thinking, one of the great things with Turgon's character is the move enables us to show shift in character. So Ellen, coming back to a point you were making before, Ellen was pointing out that, of course, Turgon is proud, like he won't abandon the work of his own hands. So that seems at odds with what I was saying about humility in Turgon's court. And you're right. But see, here I think we have an opportunity to show that, right? Turning inward in the way that he is, separating himself, wanting to basically kind of detach from reality and create this sort of world of enchantment, this like little fantasy world in which like he is back in, like, let's pretend we never left Valinor, right? The way that's kind of him folding back on himself there, his own mind folding back in on itself, and therefore, by the way, very pointedly failing in what Elenwe had seen, right, in what Elenwe wanted for them, right, for Turgon. But anyway, that he would grow in pride over the course of centuries doing that, it would, that makes a lot of sense, right? You
mean pride in the destructive sense of pride? Well,
right? Yeah, certainly. So anyway,
which is an interesting parallel.
Yeah,
too, to see them both kind of doing something like that. That they actually develop that direction.
Yes, exactly. So I'm thinking, I when I talk about him being humble, it's not that I think we should show, like Turgon is the one who always like dresses in very plain clothes and doesn't draw any attention to himself. I'm not saying that. It's not that he is countercultural in that way, but I think that where he starts off here in Vinyamar is he's fairly low. He's in a fairly low place emotionally, certainly. And I think that there has to be a fair amount of self-doubt that is involved in his regret, right? His regretting the decision to cross the Helcaraxa. And I would think that he would, for now, be in a, not necessarily a repentant frame of mind. I think that would be too far for Turgon at this point. But what I am thinking is that his shift to Gondolin, like his throne room in Gondolin, should be quite different, and should be in fact modeled after the throne room of Finwë in Tirion, right? So the difference, I think, between the two can be pretty stark and can be a good visual cue of the path that Turgon is walking, right? Exactly, Ellen. You're thinking the same thing. That's exactly it. Yeah, Ellen. I think that his interaction with Olmo can, in fact, be a thing which, in that way, kind of triggers his pride in some ways, almost perversely, actually, at the end of the day. But yeah. Okay, so I love it when we get a chance to, or when we make a chance by wild digression to really dig into the mentality of one of our very many characters here. And it's worth thinking about for lots of reasons. I think we've done this is exactly the kind of discussion I wanted to have when I was pushing for details about Turgon's throne room. See how important that is and how much we can convey and how much we can articulate by thinking through all this stuff. And you're absolutely right, Marie. Turgon is very worth investing in because he's going to be a very important character for us. And we certainly want Turgon's fall at the end to be very significant. And his decision, the arrival of Tuor at Gondolin needs to be a very, very important moment and to feel very important. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good. So we have Turgon's court, and we can imagine a ceremony of sorts, right? I know that their realms were established in the previous episode, but yeah, I mean, yes, like obviously he's built Vinyamar, right? Like he'd taken his time to construct it, but I don't see any reason why this couldn't be like the first official visit of Fingolfin there, right? You know, that there would be this kind of blessing there. You know, has he done the rounds already? I don't know, but we didn't show him doing it anyway. But I'm sort of thinking about, even if there's already been some kind of investiture or something, however it is exactly they do that, I'm thinking of, politically speaking, the function of the Merethaderthad, right? Yes, they're wanting to all join together. They're wanting to, this is to be a celebration, not only a celebration, but hopefully an enactment, right, of peace and of reconciliation and of, concord among everybody. But there also needs to be, I mean, like, you're in the room of one of the kings of the Noldor who has laid claim to this whole land. Like, that's kind of an elephant in the room in a sense, right? I would think that they would actually talk about that. That's why I like incorporating some kind of official ceremonial, right? At the very least, like Turgon's throne room, like his city of Vinyamar can now be complete. That gives us an opportunity to show progress, right? How these things haven't popped up overnight, and to give a sense of time passing. Yeah, good, exactly. Marie says it's like when a bishop establishes a new cathedral. It's already built, but now you're making it official for its use. That's exactly the kind of ceremony that I'm thinking. Yeah, exactly. No, Ellen, exactly. When I said reconciliation, I wasn't translating, but I get talking about our themes, right? The Feast of Reuniting, of course, technically. But again, that's, us all joining together. But also worked into that an acknowledgement of, here's how things are going to be, right? That's got to be involved. Here we are. Noldor are here, and we're, kind of claiming this land, right? Turgon is going to act like he's the king around here, and you're invited to stay, Sindar cousins of ours, right? But again, like, let's be clear about how things are going to be as well, right? It's not to say that all Noldor are going to rule all Sindar, but if you do come to live here, keep in mind, Turgon is king. And that, of course, goes for all of the different realms of the Noldor. So I think that's got to be, it might seem to be, in a sense, to be kind of outside of the theme, even contrary to the theme of reuniting, right, of reconciliation. But it's, I feel like something that has to be acknowledged, something that has to be, and something that can be embraced by the Sindar themselves, right? Because this is one thing that I think is we certainly don't want to show the Noldor as simply imperialist, right? And one of the things that the Sindar, one reaction that I would want to encourage among the Sindar, right, is their reaction to the Noldor coming and establishing kingdoms should not be, oh, good, like here are these, carpetbaggers coming into Beleriand. Rather, their reaction should be, hooray, now it's safe to live outside of Doriath. That's great. Right, exactly. As Aslan's Compass says, oh, look, people with better weapons. This is cool. Yes, exactly.
Right, and they don't have, they don't really have, like, there's no notion, at least at this point in Middle Earth history, there's no notion of, like, sort of, I guess, imperialism or colonizers or anything like that. There would be no reason to be suspicious, right?
No. And certainly the concept of, like, enslavement or oppression, like, by elves, of elves by elves, like, that's not going to be on anybody's radar screen. Yeah. And that's, I think it's an important thing for us to keep in mind. It's another one of those times when it's going to look different to the viewers than it's going to look to the people on screen, right? To the characters within the story. Viewers on screen are going to see this, like, emissaries of a culturally advanced society coming to the land where people's technology is comparatively primitive and establishing kingdoms where they establish themselves as the rulers over the natives. We've heard this story before, right? We know exactly how this goes, and there's going to be tons, obviously, of associations with that kind of thing. Well, the elves have not heard that story before. That has never happened, and it's never even been on the table. The only thing that they have that is the only basis that they have, the only experience that they have is with the horror that's coming out of the north, right? The werewolves and the orc armies and everything else, and the monsters and things. So they're not going to have that association at all. Again, like that's one of the reasons. Well, let me say this a different way. This is the payoff for one of the decisions I was urging before about how I was saying there's no Sindar living up in the north. Not having an indigenous population of Sindar up, around Mithrim and everything. When the Noldor arrive, one of the payoffs for this is if we keep the Sindar in previous ages in Doriath, especially, like, they used to wander more, right? But of course, especially ever since the invasions that were happening back in season 3, they've been all gathered inside the girdle, right, for protection against Morgoth. The girdle of Melian was their only defense. Now they see that there's another option, right? I mean, like the protection by the Noldor can be like, it's not like the girdle of Melian. It's of a very different thing, but it's like a second layer of protection, right? And now they can come. So the freedom to return to places where they used to live, right? Some of them did used to live in Nevrast, and now they can go back because it's not just full of werewolves anymore. Now it's full of Noldor who are fighting off the werewolves, and that's great. Now we can join together and live in peace once more in the places that now we can explore other places. Hey, I know, let's go up and live around Mithrim. I hear it's fun up there, right? Let's go and explore there because now we can. So yeah, that this can be, I think, a way that if we can convey that, so because I really want to avoid associations, and that they're very hard to escape, but I want to avoid any conception that this is just purely imperialism on the Noldor part. I think that's really important. No, Marie, I think it's an important balance. The Noldor and Sindar are naive to the concept of imperialism, but the Noldor are very clear about these realms being theirs. Yes, they are ruling. And again, I think that the Sindar, who who are coming in are the Sindar who are coming in are very happy to be ruled, right? Very happy to be protected, very happy to work with them to protect the realm. Besides which, we remember back to our discussions that we've had on the elvish nature of kingship, right? Kingship, not so much of a top-down thing in elvish culture as, I think it is or comes to be in human culture, not quite so less dictating that goes on, I think, among elvish kings. Yeah. So now, Nick, you're absolutely right. I think that, when this airs, there will be criticisms that we're ignoring the actual experience of real colonialism, that we're creating this like theoretically ideal colonialism, which would seem to support the entire colonial system. Yeah, no, I can hear those criticisms already running as well, right? But the answer to that is very simple. Hey, everybody, remember, we're imagining here, and what we're imagining is what a colonial situation would look like in this kind of situation, right? What if they didn't have these kinds of motivations? What if this wasn't happening? And the point is not to avoid it, right? Not to we're going to create, this happy world in which imperialism is friendly and cheerful, right? That's not the point. The point, we're going to get there, right? We're going to get to real and horrible kinds of imperialism. We're certainly going to get there by the Numenorians, if no time sooner. We're going to get there.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a specious. That would be a specious criticism because even with the elves, it won't even continue to be true very long.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because Ellen, you're right. Their ambition is a thing, and we're going to see varying degrees. Some of the lands will be less happy than others and less benevolent than others. No, the point of all of this, one of the things that we established from season 1 of the Film Project, we want to show how the falls happen, right? We want to, and in order to be able to understand, in order to be able to appreciate the extent to which, enslaving and destructive imperialism is an abomination, you need to understand where it is before it falls, right? That's the whole point. We have this model so that when we get to the other model, it looks like it should look, right? We can really show it and understand it better. Anyway, so yeah, that's exactly, and we're going to have, and of course, yes, behind all of this, Ellen, and that's the delightful tension of the Merith Atherthad, right? Getting back to the Merith Atherthad, which we're supposed to be talking about, the delightful tension here is that we have it's all happy, joy, right? Everybody's happy. Everybody, the Sindar are celebrating. Hooray. They're running around like the winged monkeys at the end of the Wizard of Oz, right? Now the Wicked Witch is dead. Right now we can finally celebrate and be ourselves and return to our lands and everything. And this is great. The Noldor are fantastic. We love you guys. This is wonderful. So happy to see you guys again. What a benefit to us, and we can benefit you, and all live happily ever after. And the Noldor are like, yeah, and here we are setting up our realms, and it's kind of awesome having realms. Not going to lie about that, but we're going to do good, and we're going to fight Morgoth, and you guys are going to help us, and this is going to be great. And all through the whole time, there's the kinslaying, right? And the knowledge that these are the very people, right? These are the relatives of the very people whose, the blood relatives of the folks that they slew are there with them in the Merith Atherthad, and they're hiding it, and they're lying to them the whole time, at least seriously withholding information. So that's the tension that is at the core of the Merith Atherthad, and I think that has to be at the core of this episode in particular, right? So when we get to the drama of this episode, that is Sauron and Thurin Gwethil, they are going to figure it out. Now, remind me, because it was like weeks ago that we talked about episodes 3 and 4. Sauron and Thuringwethel figured it out, right? They know the truth about the kinslaying. Thuringwethel, we had Thuringwethel peeping in windows, didn't we? Hearing people talking about it?
Yes, we did.
Right, we did. Yeah, because she goes back and reports.
Right. Okay. I was pretty sure that we did. So Sauron and Thuringwethel come to the Merith Adderthad with the knowledge of the kinslaying, and they are super conscious of the tension here and of the potential to undermine this. So, I mean, they're looking around and they're seeing this and they're like, okay, this is bad, right? This kind of peace and harmony, for the, for the elves, that's not okay, right? We want to mess this up. And they have the weapon right to hand, right? The truth, and it's the truth, right? They don't even have to spread lies. They just have to spread the truth, actually, which puts Sauron and Thuringwethel in an interesting position. Right. Okay, Marie, thanks for reminding me. We had her over here enough to figure out the basic nature of the secret being hidden. Exactly. So Sauron and Thuringwethel know the truth, or enough of the truth to go on, right? They know about the dark secret. They know what the dark secret is generally about. None of the Sindar know. None of the Sindar even suspect, because we're still at the very early stages of that. So recall we had said, I think I'm recalling, me telling people to remember is pretty ironic. But I believe if I'm recalling correctly, we said that at this early stage, we're still at the Sindar are still at we're not suspicious. They won't talk about what happened, but we're not suspicious because it's still the grief is too near for words thing, right? So they obviously have had a heck of a time and really bad things have happened to them, and we want to really understand. And in fact, being that this is in Turgon's court and they would be having some of these conversations under the shadow of the statue of Elenwe, right? It's easy enough to understand. You're a well-intentioned Sindarin person, and you're being well, yeah, naturally, this must have been what they must have gone. I can't even imagine what they must have gone through, right? So this is horrible, and I won't pry, right? There's something, there's a darkness, there is a grief that lies upon them, but we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't ask them. So the concealment is happening, but the concealment is easy to this point. At some point, it would have gotten hard on its own, but Sauron is the one who's going to start making it hard, right? He and Thuringwethel are going to stir up the pot. So they disguise themselves. What exactly do they do? I mean, they're not going to be super obvious about it, right? One of the things, of course, that they could do really interestingly would be disguising themselves as Noldor and being extra clumsy and suspicious about deflecting questions and things. We have to be careful because it's not, I mean, obviously they're not, we can't have Sauron and Thuringwethel standing up on a plinth and being they killed your relatives! They killed them! So that's, that's not okay.
Wouldn't we see an echo of how Melkor was in Valinor the first time he was let go? How he
exactly.
Discord very subtly.
The sowing of discord. And the sowing of discord here is, it's a different dynamic, right, than it was. So with Melkor,
it is
I almost said Numenor, in Valinor, it was about leading them to first think very highly of themselves, and then to begin to sow seeds of doubt against the Valar. I guess we can kind of parallel that. You know what I really like? So Maria's talking about them playing both sides. I really like the idea, Marie, of showing a Sindar and a Noldor in conversation, and they're having a sort of an increasingly awkward conversation, and and others are overhearing them and getting uneasy, right? And then it turns out that like both of the people in the conversation, like one was Sauron and one was Thuringwethel, and like they'd staged the entire both halves of the conversation. I think that would be really fun. Now, Nick asks the excellent question. He says it begs the question, why don't they just stand on a plinth and yell, they killed everybody, they killed your relatives? Wouldn't that be easier? The only argument that I can see for why that wouldn't be easier is that people wouldn't believe it. That they wouldn't be ready to know that yet. And it would sound crazy, exactly. Like the person would just sound nuts.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So like the manic, like I'm gonna like get a sign and, like wear a placard on my front that says like doom is nigh, the Noldor are gonna kill us all. I have to admit, Alan, I see your objection. I don't understand how it's implausible. Like they're spying and they're spying on the Noldor, and they they have every opportunity. The Noldor are not going to never talk about it among themselves. Right. I mean, that's going to happen. It's going to come up. Like what happened with them back in Valinor is going to come up among themselves without any of the Sindar there. And if Thuringwethel is spying, there's no reason that she can't hear it. No, Ellen, we did. I think you missed that episode. We showed them spying back in episode 4. That happened already. We did that. That was one of the that was like the climax of episode 4. So we're all prepared on that. Yeah. Okay. So Nick is asking his provocative question a different way. So instead of standing up on a plinth and yelling like a crazy person, if one of them were to act like one of the Noldor and just straight up describing the kinslaying, wouldn't that work? Our model here. Yeah, Aslan's Compass says the kinslaying is so completely outside their comprehension that like there might be the same problem. Like surely, like this must be like a horrible joke. No, Nick, I agree. I know you're not like suggesting these things, but wanting to anticipate the poking of holes, as you say. That's a good way to think about it. We have one obvious textual model, right, for this kind of thing. None of the Merith Atherthat, of course. But of course, I'm thinking of the discussions of the emissary of the enemy who smuggled himself into the Edain discussions, right? And there, the emissary does use open argument, saying like the elves are lying. There is no darkness in the north. The elves themselves are the problem. They're just trying to, they're trying to deceive you. That kind of thing would that sort of approach work? Somebody coming in and, the direct parallel there, if we wanted to do a direct parallel to that incident, the direct parallel would be Sauron disguises himself as one of the Sindar and urges the rest of the Sindar to reject the Noldor because he is discovered in a way that he maybe doesn't explain the truth, right? Yeah. Now, good, as Maria's reminding us, like, they don't know everything. Like, they don't know all of the details because, we didn't have Thuringwethel overhearing one of those as you know conversations, right? Where the Noldor spill the beans explicitly and in detail about the entire story. She's overheard enough to know the gist of what happened, right? She knows that there was blood. She knows that there was bloodshed. She knows that the Noldor shed it. She knows that Teleri blood was shed. And from there, knowing what they know about Feanor and everything, then Sauron can begin to guess the rest. He might not know everything yet, but he knows enough to know. So that would be a good reason why they're not just doing an expose here, right? Why they're not trying any kind of shock tactics, because they also, that is, they, Sauron and Thurin-Gwethil, are also still pumping for information, right? They are, that what their goal here is to, yes, they want to arouse suspicions among the Sindar. They have discovered that there is a secret, and they know it's bad. They know that it is a crime committed by the Noldor and that the Noldor are concealing it. That's what they know, right? So their best move here is to just make the Sindar suspicious so that the Sindar dig themselves. And they also, Sauron and Thurin-Gwethil, are also going to dig as well, trying to trip up the Noldor, trying to get one of the Noldor to say something, Enolo to say something, revealing, right? Especially something that is going to get the rest of the Sindar to be, pursuing more questions and things like that. That would explain this. If their information is still relatively limited and they're working off of speculation, that would certainly explain why they're not coming out and giving an impassioned, like, let me tell you the truth about our neighbors, in the form of a Sindar, like Amlach did at that meeting. So they would be just spreading rumors, right? They would be saying, things like, my cousin told me that he heard one of the Noldor talking to another one and saying that, like, as if there was some crime that they'd committed or whatever. One of the outcomes. So, Hakan, thinking about Círdan's role here. Círdan's role is difficult because, on the one hand, his inquiry is very honest and, of course, in a sense, very right. But he's also taking the bait, Sauron's bait, right? There is a sense in which there is, from one way of looking at it, Círdan is Sauron's tool throughout this business, right? The more Círdan pushes to discover the truth, the better Sauron is pleased. And I would think that it wouldn't be too long, probably not here in episode 5, but by episode 6, Sauron and Thurin-Gwethil should have fixed upon Círdan as their best hope for discord among the elves of Beleriand, right? He's onto it, right? Let's encourage that. This doesn't make Círdan a bad guy or his inquiries wrong. It just means that in doing what he's doing for very good reasons, he is, in fact, doing the work of Sauron. Maria's suggesting questions. Do you really think the Valar sent the Noldor? Why do you think the Noldor won't talk about what happened when they came? Is it just grief, or do you think they're hiding something? Yeah, those are the kinds of questions you could see them asking. Good. And Nick points out one can see their frustration when the Sindar seem to be oblivious to the obviously suspicious behavior. Yeah, there should be certain examples of total failure to make any traction, right, with the Sindar there. Good, exactly. As Nick says, at every turn, the Sindar should be resistant to thinking badly of their new friends. Absolutely. They should be actively, not only is the kinslaying completely outside their worldview, like they literally cannot imagine such a thing like that happening. They very actively want to believe in the Noldor. They're going to take a lot of convincing. So earlier we had suggested something like a crisis arising. Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel trying to push things to a real crisis. That there be a real risk that things were actually going to get ugly, that something bad was going to happen there at the Marathon Arthad. And the suggestion, when we were talking about Luthien before, we were suggesting that maybe Luthien calms things down. We get Luthien singing and dancing, and she diffuses what Sauron is doing. Here's the thing. And I don't know how to depict this exactly. No, I do know how. I think the only way we can depict this musically, through the score, right? If we can show through the score, Sauron is not just spreading rumors. And he is spreading rumors, but he's not just spreading rumors. He is also putting forth his power, right? He is putting forth his powers to influence and bring the Sindar to certain, and the Noldor in certain other ways, right? He is trying to create a spirit of discord here. That is what Luthien is going to completely diffuse, right? Yes, Nick, exactly. The power that is in the Ring of Power, Sauron has it. It's not in the ring yet, but it was always his power, right? His power to dominate the will of others is one of his signature powers, right? Oh, that's really interesting. Nick says, the stuff we were talking about before gives Sauron the opportunity for a moment of insight. He explains to Thurin-Gwethel what the audience must be asking. That is, why don't they get suspicious? Like, what's wrong? Why is this not working? Because Sauron has not yet come to the point where he cannot comprehend good. Yeah. And maybe that's when he sort of decides that he's going to have to work on the wills of he needs to work on and corrupt the wills of the Sindar if he's going to get anywhere, right? So maybe the first half is we see it sort of failing, right? Then what does he do? Does he sing? Do we need Sauron to do a musical number? Does he sing or play an instrument? Which would be innocent enough. There'd be lots of that kind of thing going on. We could have, as we discussed, people taking turns telling stories and singing songs. What if we had like, a Maglor number, and maybe not Dairon yet. Maybe we had Maglor playing at the beginning, and then Sauron in fake Sindarin guise takes up, the instrument, whatever instrument we decide we want it to be, and we have him play music, right? And influencing people that way. Marie reminds us that we did have him show his power through singing when Maedhros was captured, so having him use music as a weapon here would make sense. I wasn't exactly thinking the devil went down to Georgia, Nick, but see what I was thinking of though is he takes the instrument and he starts to sing, and in the background, right? He's not the center of attention at all, right? Discussions and things are happening and they're not even aware of. But then here's like the audience, we would show Sauron right off on the side beginning to play, and the music changes, right? And we get the we would need from Phil the creepy Sauron spreading discord, like corrupting the wills of the Sindar and spreading discord theme, right? That Sauron would begin to play. And yeah, exactly, Marie. He would have to be one of the Sindar. He would have to be disguised as a Sindar in order to do this. Okay, so here he is. He's playing, and then we can we then show the effect that it has on the people, right? And how would it manifest itself? What kind of warning signs would we see? Somebody would get alarmed, right? What would happen to people? They would, and maybe the theme would have to be careful because it can't be too evil, right? It has to be insidious. Like he can't pick up a lute and start playing and everybody be like, all right, who's that guy playing the evil music? That's gonna, the music thing would have to be really, really subtle. So yeah, things like an argument breaking out, Marie, definitely. Small things at first, right? That would show unease, and then so finally we get like an argument, maybe even an actual fight somewhere kind of breaks out. Luthien sees it, and she, good. Ellen is imagining one of the Feanorians making an arrogant and disparaging remark about the Sindar. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I would expect to happen under the influence of Sauron's music. Luthien then breaks in, right? And she breaks in by singing. And she's singing, and her singing cuts across Sauron's music, and Sauron's music dies. Right. And she sings, and after she sings, then Dairon starts playing to accompany her. Right. So first it's just her singing. And, I'm imagining this like sort of space opening around her. In fact, it would be really kind of fun. That would be a really kind of fun visual reminder of the girdle of Melian, right? Just as Melian steps out and the spiders go right in season 3, to have her step into the middle of the room where everyone is like talking with increasing unease and discord. And she begins singing. And when she begins singing, this space opens up around her as everybody kind of backs off. And then Dairon steps forward and he begins to accompany her, and then she begins to dance and, nice, Nick. Right. And then first you have Luthien singing by herself, and then Dairon begins to accompany her, and then Maglor comes in and joins the two of them. Right. So we have Maglor, Dairon, and Luthien all singing at the same time. And that absolutely, and then, we look around and Sauron is gone. Right. He's just left the building, at that point, and nobody saw him leave. Yeah, that works. I love that. So, we got to be careful. We can't be too over the top and hokey about the conversations and the discord and everything else. But I think that progression makes some sense to me. That progression to say, we're going to first just try spreading rumors. It's not going to work. We're going to be able to show to the audience that like they are really resistant to thinking ill of each other. Right. To show how far this is outside their normal worldview. And then Sauron saying, okay, I'm gonna go at it more directly. And then Luthien with her moment. Okay. Yeah, good. Like it. I like it. I think that works. That works really well. There can be some people who don't really pick up on what happened, right? Who don't really fully understand that. There will be some who will guess. If they don't guess that it was Sauron personally, they will know something just happened there, right? We need to be on our guard. Who would be most sensitive to that? Which of the elves would be most sensitive to the fact that had happened? Yeah. Ooh, Finrod. Yeah. Yeah. Finrod. Ooh, Maedhros, Hakon suggests. Yes. Yes. I don't know. Maedhros knows the power of Sauron singing. Who better? Yeah, exactly, Murray. That's what I was just thinking too. I like, Finrod being the thing. Yeah, but yeah, Maedhros is the one who's felt it before. I'm kind of imagining Maedhros having like a PTSD reaction, actually. Maybe Maedhros doesn't talk about it, but yeah, he's
yeah, me too.
He's kind of looking like Aragorn in the Ynit Bree when talking about the Ringwraiths, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, Nick, having Maedhros and Fingon in a conversation, right? We cut to a conversation, like Fingon and Maedhros were standing together when this happens. And we, yeah, they have different reactions and realize it for different reasons. But yeah, no, that could work. I like that. Okay. Meanwhile, we have romance. So we have two romantic connections being made here. A simpler one and a more complex one. The simple one is Orodreth and Merrill. So Orodreth the Noldo needs to meet his Sindarin wife here at the Marathod Arthad. And that's simple enough because they're not major characters. And their relationship is not a complex one within our story here. So that's easy enough to we don't even have to give them dialogue. In fact, please, let's not have cheesy dialogue between Orodreth and Merrill. We could just show them dancing, right? We show them dancing and, smooching or whatever it is that elves do. And, them just being happy in the middle of the, dance floor or whatever is fine, right?
I think keeping it subtle is a good idea.
Yeah. So we just see them being happy together, and we'll we don't actually have to, they're not going to get married here. We'll just find out later that they're married, right? So, but we introduce them, and they, of course, therefore, the role that the two of them play in this episode, they are like the representatives, right? They're like the symbol of the union between the Noldor and the Sindar, right? As they embody the benevolent coming together of Noldor and Sindar that is being celebrated here in this moment. So them falling in love together is like a personification of the joining together of the two cultures. That's all really good. Galadriel and Celeborn obviously are in a different situation, and there should be no smooching or whatever it is that elves do between Galadriel and Celeborn, because of course this is a sad moment, the moment that we had contemplated here. And if we're good, this can be played off of in really interesting ways. The rumor attempts and things that Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel are doing. So all the while that Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel, armed with some, though not all, knowledge that there is of the secret of the Noldor, are trying to make people suspicious and spread discord on that premise. At the same time, somewhere else, we have one of the Noldor actually making a full confession to one of the Sindar. Right, in Galadriel confessing to Celeborn about her mother's death and the kinslaying. And to have that be the counterpoint, right? We have on the one hand, like the party where there's like lots of, people don't really know anything of the true story, and attempts to make them suspicious, which are largely failing. But you have the real sort of joining, the real forgiveness happening off screen. Or not off screen, but off stage, off of that main stage, off on the side. Galadriel, I think, leaves the party, and she's got to leave the party fairly early on. Like, we establish the party at the beginning, and we certainly show Orodreth and Merrill being super happy and lovey together from the beginning during Maglor's piece, right? And then she heads off to the side. Right, exactly. It is a weeks-long party, Marie, as we discussed. But I just mean, as far as our episode is concerned. Yeah. Ooh, wait, Nick, whose were you suggesting be the argument that breaks out during Sauron's music? Which couple were you suggesting argue during the music? Orodreth and Merrill, right? Having them have a falling out, or have okay, that would be interesting. I'm not sure. I guess they could do that and have a smoochy, reconciliation afterwards or something. I don't know. That might be too many for me. I'm not sure. But anyway, Galadriel. So Galadriel leaves, right? While the party is still happy and Sauron is still failing to make any traction, Galadriel leaves. And Celeborn sees her leave and follows her. And so they have their private conversation. He would show her that he is aware. There would be some kind of... We've shown Galadriel having conversation with Melian, right? And refusing to tell Melian any more than, a certain few things. Celeborn, like Melian, would be able to tell that, there is something that she is not telling. It would, say the darkness and the grief behind her. She would begin by talking about her mother's death and her grief for that. And I would think that she would do that because she would appreciate Celeborn's kindness and pity for her suffering. But at the same time, I think she would be hoping to avoid the full confession, right? So she would tell him about her mother's death and hope that he would leave it at that, but he doesn't leave it at that, right? Because he is wise. He is very wise, as Galadriel is going to insist in the Fellowship of the Ring. And he sees past that, right? And he's, and so he would say something like, yeah, no, like I get you, right? Like, yeah, you're sad about your mom. I see that, but that's not it, right? It's this, what you are feeling is more than grief. And then she opens up and admits about the kinslaying. When she does that, I think she doesn't ask Celeborn to keep it a secret. But he tells her, so it's his idea to tell her that he's not going to tell anybody else. Because he wants to show her that he's not going to try to profit off of this information, that even though it is obviously important, he's not even going to tell Thingol about it because he respects her grief and her privacy, and that this is not, it makes sense in a couple ways for her to want to protect the rest of the Noldor and not mess things up, but I don't want her begging him to keep it a secret. She would want that, but I don't think she would ask for that. I don't think she would beg for that. And I think that he would perceive that she wants that, and he would volunteer that, showing that he understands her and that he respects her, and that this is her secret, not his. But yeah, I don't think that Galadriel should say, please don't tell anybody, right? That doesn't feel like Galadriel to me. She should be too proud for that. She won't, no, not beg, not command. No, just, we could have her thinking do I have to kill this guy now? Right. But anyway, it doesn't matter because it doesn't come to that, right? Before, while she is still being silent, thinking through like the implications of her honesty, right? He recovers Marie exactly from his shock because he's going to have a hard time processing this. And then he recognizes that she does need this. Yeah. No, I think Galadriel needs to tell someone about this. She needs to. The way that this is, Galadriel's guilt. She is guilty. She has blood on herself. And you remember we had I wanted her to actually kill folks back in season 3. And you guys didn't want to have her actually killing folks, which is fine. I concede that. But I did at least want blood splattered on her, if not on her hands. But she's guilty. Right? She has guilt. She feels guilt. She was involved. She made the choice to support the Noldor. She was attacking. She didn't attack yet. She didn't kill anybody. But she was running to attack the Teleri before her mom died. And he perceives, as we've said before, he perceives that she needs to forgive herself. And he can say that. I think that he can get to that place. She doesn't do it yet, right? But I think we can even bring him to a place where he sees, like, you need to forgive yourself. So yes, her admitting this. In admitting this, she is making herself vulnerable. And this is potentially a massive breach of Noldoran policy. I think that she has the guts to do that. I think that... But there's no question that she is putting herself in his power by doing this. And yeah, exactly. She is trusting him implicitly. She doesn't swear him to secrecy first. She doesn't beg for secrecy or command secrecy afterwards. The trust, the vulnerability, and the trust has to be implicit but strong. We had them interacting, when was it? Episode 3? Episode 4? One of the reasons I wanted to get Galadriel to Doriath earlier rather than later was to give her more time so that we can give her a couple scenes with Celeborn to convey to the audience that they've had a chance to get to know each other. Yeah, episode 3, we showed that. So it's been a while now. So much time has passed. We are conveying that much time has passed since we already saw them interacting. So this is not like their first conversation and she's trusting a stranger by any stretch. Okay. I like that. I think that's enough to work with there. Maybe we should move on to episode 6. How about that?
Oh, you're a party pooper.
I know. Enough of the party. Okay. Good, right. We saw them having their first conversation in episode 1, the meeting again in Doriath in episode 3. Yeah, good. We've laid, I think, plenty of groundwork for us to be able to believe that they have, a good relationship by this point. Yeah, good. Yeah, Hakan, I agree. It's important that there's no manipulation going on either side. Right. This is vulnerable honesty on her part. And this is, just sort of like sincere concern for her on his part. Yeah. Okay. Episode 6. This is much simpler, so no problem. Episode 6. We have Círdan, if not at the center of this whole episode, then certainly Círdan very involved with this. In fact, we could have Círdan as the central figure, I think, of this episode, perhaps. Yeah. I had almost forgotten. We had Thorin Gwethel as the central figure of the entire episode 4, didn't we? I love that idea still. My goodness, that was a fantastic idea.
We're genius. We're just geniuses.
Yeah, that is absolutely genius. So, okay. If we have the focal point on Círdan, so Círdan has gone home from the Marathon very thoughtful, right? And he's thinking about a couple different... So on the one hand, he is going to be aware of the fact that, again, thinking about what I was already describing with Círdan, how he is going to, in essence, be the tool of Sauron while not doing anything wrong, he can be reflecting on what happened, like with the whole Sauron and Luthien incident, right? Be reflecting. So when he thinks back to the things that he heard and the questions that were being asked, like, of course, by Sauron and Thorin Gwethel in disguise, when he reflects on that, he realizes there is something, like, and in a sense, like, we can hear him sort of echoing Celeborn's thoughts towards Galadriel, right? But in a different tone and in a different context. There is more here than grief, right? Yes, there is something dark. There is something in the past of the Noldor that they haven't spoken of, but it's not just grief. They are not just the victims of tragedy. There is something else there. And he might reflect upon the incident, right? The music and Luthien's diffusing it, right? And think, so he might even have the thought, these questions were begun in malice, but he can't let them go because there's something to them. Like, malice may be behind it, but there's truth here. And this is a truth that even if it is an unhappy truth, it is a truth that Thingol needs to know. So he is going to begin actively trying to ferret this out. How does he do that? We have him learning that Feanor burned the ships. Okay, how? What's Círdan's information? If Círdan is going to make up his mind to try to figure out the information, how's he going to do that? By interrogating Noldor himself? By sending out some of his people to interrogate Noldor and report back to him? He's not going to send folks to spy. He wouldn't do that. So what would he do? I wouldn't think he would send out underlings to go interrogate Noldorin underlings and report back to him. If he had questions about this, he'd ask, right? He'd ask. So, okay. So Marie, I think, Marie points out that Sauron knows that Feanor burned the ships. That news could come through Sauron. Yeah. I think Sauron has to become actively complicit in this. So one of the take-homes, right, I'm thinking, what does Sauron and Thorin Gwethel's debrief look like at the end of the Marathon, right? They're like, okay, right, great. On the one hand, that spreading rumors thing was disappointingly unsuccessful, right? We're going to have an uphill battle here in trying to, now we see what we're up against, right? This is going to be harder than we think, but we're still up to it. And that direct attempt to manipulate their wills kind of didn't pan out. So, so they're going to say, we're going to adopt a new strategy, right? And the new strategy they're going to adopt is they're going to say, okay, that attempt to manipulate the wills of masses of the elves all at once, which he did at the party. That didn't work. We need to isolate them, right? So let's start the catch and release program. Let's capture individual elves and break their wills privately, right? We'll take them back to Angband, we'll break their wills, and we'll use them as our tools. If we can that's going to be the best way long-term for us to undermine the sublime confidence that the Teleri Sindar, same basic thing, that the Sindar have in the Noldor, right? But we need more tools. So as he's doing this also, he's going to hear about Círdan, right? Going to know that Círdan is maybe Thuringwethil notices this. Maybe Thuringwethil reports she noticed, like, Círdan was the one who through the whole thing was looking most, maybe she has a conversation. Yeah. So let's show during the Marathadathad, Thuringwethil in disguise has a conversation with Círdan, and Círdan is the only one who seems to be interested, right? Círdan is the only one who is not like, oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. He's at least curious or seems troubled, and so she can report that to Sauron, like, hey, Círdan, he seemed troubled and he's really close to Thingol, so this would be a good way, right? Let's work on that. So Sauron says, okay, great, Thuringwethil, you and I, let's divide forces, right? I am going to work on the catch and release. So I'm going to get Tevildo to help. Tevildo, of course, is going to be the one who's going to do the catching, right? The cats are the stealth ninjas, right? So he's going to go and Hakon says, yeah, exactly. Thuringwethil's going to be like, hey, there was this bearded guy. Yeah, he was the one. Suspicious, a suspicious character correlates with facial hair. Anyway, so Sauron is going to send Tevildo out, and Tevildo is going to capture some elves for him and bring him back and help him torture him and stuff. So he's going to be focusing on breaking them. And meanwhile, Thuringwethil, go to the Havens, right, and disguise yourself and start working on Círdan. So Thuringwethil comes to Círdan, and she's going to pretend that she is, who's she going to pretend to be? She could pretend to be a Noldo. But anyway, through her, Círdan learns the truth about the burning of the ships, right? So she'd have to be pretending that she learned. Now, if she were pretending to be a Cinda, then she would be able to say, like, hey, I found out this truth. Probably easier for her to pretend to be a Cinda from far away, right? And she comes in, she's like, hey, I was nearby, I was on the coast here. How is she gonna claim to figure it out? What's her evidence? She was talking to Winoldo, right? She was like, yeah, at the party, one of the Feanorians got drunk, right? And we're gonna and he spilled the beans that those ships weren't burned by orcs, right? They were burned by Feanor. Feanor set fire to the ships. And Círdan is going to be like, mind blown, right? But of course, Círdan accepts it because Círdan is like, that's the explanation. I've been coming up with all these cockamamie theories about how those ships got burned. Nothing made sense. This makes sense, right? He will recognize that it is true, that it fits the data. Absolutely. So sure. Great. Okay. So, interesting. So Maria's thinking if she's a fake Noldo, then she can be reluctant to disclose, but still tell him. And it can be about how the Feanorians aren't trusted by the other Noldor. She would pretend, if she were to be a fake Noldo, she would be not a fake Feanorian. She would be a fake, one of Fingon and Fingolfin's folks from the far north, maybe, right? So she would talk about the Helcaraxa. She would express some of the genuine anger still residing within, some of them, about the Feanorians. Exactly. Yeah, no, Ellen, we're getting to Círdan learning about the kinslaying, which is being gentle about it. We need to build up to that, right? We still got some time. Remind me, guys, which episode do we have the Círdan revealing the truth to Thingol? Is that 7 or is it 8? It's episode 7, right? Yeah. So he's gonna. So does that mean he's gonna get there by the end of this episode? So Círdan begins episode 6 uneasy and he ends episode 6 in full command of the facts? Or do we have that happen at the beginning of episode 7? And so episode 7 begins when Círdan gets the final piece of information and then culminates with him bringing it to Thingol by the end of the episode.
I think you end 6 with getting the information.
Okay.
It seems like.
So then how does he get it?
Right.
How does he get it then?
Hmm.
I like the finding out the truth about the burning of the ships because we already have him suspicious. We built that up. We've built up his uneasiness and uncertainty about what the heck happened, like his forensic study of the burned ships, and his assumption initially that it must have been orcs, but then doubts about that, right? And like it doesn't really seem to fit the data. Now he gets, okay, Feanor burned the ships, and this is going to open a whole bunch of things for him, because, so let's think of his progression here, right? Feanor burned the ships. That fits the facts. Like, that rings true to him right away. If Feanor burned the ships, and the rest of the Noldor, he betrayed the rest of the Noldor, that could explain the darkness, right? This resentment, this internal fighting among the Noldor, this crime of one part of the Noldor to the other, this betrayal, that maybe that's enough to explain it, right? Maybe that's okay. But then here's the next step in the chain, though. He Círdan the ship right? Nobody would be more sensitive than Círdan to what the Teleri ships meant to the Teleri, right? The significance of those ships. That Feanor set fire to the greatest ships ever constructed and ever will be constructed, right? And so he will be therefore the first of all of the Sindar to have it enter into his worldview, like, holy cow, the Noldor are really capable of atrocities, right? Not only should we not trust them blindly, we should be suspicious, because if Feanor could do that, if he could set fire to those ships, not just ships, those ships, what else wouldn't he do? And then, of course, how did he get those ships? The Teleri obviously didn't ferry him if he set fire to them, right? And so he could just logically come to the conclusion, based on that evidence, to say how he treated the ships, his burning of the ships, shows that he did not have rightful ownership of those ships. They were not lent to him in good faith, or if so, he betrayed it, right? A horrible betrayal has happened. Either the Teleri brought them over in their ships and were killed, because certainly the Teleri would have been killed before they allowed those ships to be burned, or else he killed them first and stole the ships and brought them over. Like, the concept is has got to, can all grow upon him as he is thinking through the implications of the burning of the ships, right? I kind of like the idea that the entire story is kind of embedded in that one fact, that the whole thing really becomes clear to him, like what must have happened, or at least the kind of thing that must have happened begins once he gets that one fact, once he perceives that one fact. Because one of the things that I really like about it is the kind of emphasis that it places. I've always said, of course, that I think the burning of the ships is a major turning point, in one sense, potentially even more significant than the kinslaying itself. It's the thing that really shows that he's beyond the edge. So, yeah.
Especially if Sauron and Thurin-Gwethel play a role in him finding it out.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is tell him something that's true.
Yes. All they have to do is tell him something that's true.
Yeah, one very simple, small fact, and that unravels things. Like that's always great. They don't have to lie. They don't have to do anything nefarious other than tell him something that probably he should know.
Yes, exactly. The thing is here, one of the difficulties of the kind of, we don't have much time. These episodes are short, and ideally we would like to have a large period of time pass. And during that time, during the, centuries in which or maybe it's decades at least, in which the Sindar and the Noldor are living together. Like, slow unease begins to grow among the Sindar as the Noldor continue not to share with them. Like, it's clear they're still concealing something, and and they begin to suspect that it's more than just grief. And so organic rumors begin to grow among the Sindar themselves. That's how I can easily imagine it happening that way. I don't think we have time for that. I think that kind of really like slow recognition over time is not something that we can dramatize very effectively. Especially since, I mean, as we were talking about here, having Círdan, sort of following up right away. I mean, because if he doesn't, if that has happened, then we have to have Círdan having been uneasy at the Marath Adorthad and now being like, decades have happened and I haven't looked into this. So anyway, I think that I like this idea of Círdan having this epiphany, right? Because of course, wait, then there's one more step to his logic, right? The Feanor and his people must have done something terrible. They did something terrible to the Teleri. They burned their ships, right? That's an established fact. They must have done something else. There may even have been bloodshed, right? They might have actually killed the Teleri in order to take the ships. Then the one last link in his logic chain. What about the rest of the Noldor? And then he would think about it and say, what lies behind their grief is not just anger. It's not just betrayal. It's guilt. They were involved too. They were betrayed by Feanor, but they were also involved. Like I would think that he'd be able to see that he'd be able to put that together. Yes. So he still doesn't know what happened exactly, right? Because he's not received an account. None of the Noldor have spilled the beans to him. And I kind of like it if Círdan... We would have to have had Círdan corner one of our named Noldor, right? I mean, he would have to come to a Noldor and be, somebody, Turgon or somebody, and be like, Finrod, probably, and be like, okay, buddy, tell me the truth, right? And he'd be getting like the overhead lamp and everything out, right, to interrogate Finrod or something. I don't like that scene. I don't want that scene to happen.
No.
Better if he works it out. So he's very confident, and he's almost right? He's almost exactly right. He doesn't have all the details. He doesn't know for sure how the people of Fingolfin were involved, but so the ships were definitely burned. There was almost certainly violence, because violence had to have been done to the Teleri in order for that situation to arise. So clearly violence was done, and the other Noldor have been betrayed, but they're also guilty. That's enough. He goes to Thingol. So next episode, he goes to Thingol with that, right? Then Thingol can be the one who draws the further. So Thingol hears this, and he's like, oh, okay. So every single one of these Noldor, so that all of the Noldor have come to Middle-earth red-handed with the blood of the Teleri, right? That is Thingol's conclusion, right? And so that's what he's going to accost Finrod and Angrod with, is that, he's going to accuse them and assume that they're... So they then clarify. But Thingol is the one who kind of thinks the worst, right? Yeah. No, I think because Thingol is also going to know. I mean, and he and Melian have talked, right, about what she saw in Galadriel. So it's going to fit his. That is, it's going to fit Thingol's theories as well. Okay, well, let's not get too far into episode 6 stuff. That's next episode. But I think that this all. That was good. This is a puzzle I've been having a hard time with. Like, how did Círdan find out exactly? Or how are we going to show him finding out without having him, as I say, like, waterboarding Finrod in order to figure it out? So, good.
I like him puzzling it together from this fact.
Yeah.
And I think we can overlay him sort of, like, the way we can portray him figuring it out once he's learned this fact, is we can overlay shots and scenes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either flashbacks to events or even shots even of contemporaneous events, but events that would be that for the viewers who already know it happened would show them, make it obvious that he's putting it together.
Yes.
I mean, you could show contemporaries, like, he's thinking and there's a shot of one of Feanor's sons like looking over at him concerned, or I don't know, something like there's other people in the crowd that may be getting nervous.
Right. Yes, he can remember back to the Merethaderthot and put some things together, some guilty expressions and, exchanged glances and things between Sons of Feanor or whatever. Yes. What if all of this happens in conversation with Thuringwethel in disguise, so that it is to Thuringwethel himself that he is verbally kind of spilling out his theory and his chain of reasoning, right? And Thuringwethel is there like, yes, exactly. And she prompts him on, exactly, Ellen. And maybe she didn't even see it really clearly. Again, like, they don't know all the details, right?
That's
they just
true.
know that the Noldor are guilty, and they know that the Noldor have good reason to try to keep this guilt from the Teleri. That's what they know. They're just trying to stir the pot, right? Meanwhile,
and the thing that's like extra insidious about that is that she doesn't have to tell him any lies.
Right, exactly. She doesn't have to lie to him even once. Yes,
yeah, right,
exactly. Okay. And then she comes back to Sauron. Meanwhile, Sauron has been waterboarding Noldor, so he also has figured out what's going on more exactly. What do we show Sauron doing? I'm joking about the waterboarding. What do we show Sauron doing with the elves that he has captured? His goal is to break their wills, right? He wants to be able to use them as spies. He wants them to be reporting back to him. He wants to be able to plant stories directly using them to undermine things. No, exactly. Tevildo is the master torturer. Ellen, I don't say we necessarily have to show torture on screen. I actually think that torture done off screen, by which I don't mean like screams coming from the next room. I just mean like when we know it is going to happen, or we know it has happened. I find that so much more effective than actually showing somebody screaming on screen, personally. But anyhow. Okay, so he's trying to break their wills. How much success do we show him having? Are we going to have some of our catch and release elves there present? Are we going to be introducing those here? Or are we going to save that for episode 7? I think that episode 6 should really focus on Círdan and Thuringwethel more. And some of the betrayals are going to be saved until season 5. Yeah, the catch and release program is a very longitudinal program on Sauron's part. Right, we were going to have Marie Morgoth coming back with this full spell of bottomless dread to break Elder-Lotte. Yes, we'll get there eventually. Right. Okay, so we have... All we could do is just showing the capture then, right? We could merely establish in episode 6 the fact that some elves, and perhaps like Elder-Lotte herself, we can show her captured and brought back to... brought back to Sauron, and some kind of like horribly unspeakable implication of like that he plans to do something that we're not going to find out what it is to her. Rogue 2 maybe, yeah, sure, that way we can get sure good. Ellen, not sure I agree with you that we have to establish Anile in Mithrim before he's captured. I mean, we could do that, but I'm not sure that that's necessary. But I'm not going to worry about that for episode 6. Okay. Other things in episode 6. We also have Gothmog doing his own experimentation, trying to get the army in gear. Okay, forcing the orcs to endure sunlight unsuccessfully. We have to be careful. Sauron, of course, his success has not been a career of uninterrupted success. Sauron's has not been enjoying uninterrupted success, of course, in his campaigns, but he's accomplishing some things, clearly, especially in this episode. So we don't want Gothmog just to be looking kind of lame and silly by comparison. I love the glimpse of Morgoth busy in Hildorian, right? Like if we just get one scene somewhere, right? Maybe the opening scene, right? What if the opening scene of episode 6 is like this, the altar that has been established and Morgoth standing behind it in glory with the eclipse going on and the men of Hildorian cowering around him and yeah, exactly. Mortals bowing down on some kind of like ziggurat-ish thing or something like that. That would be fun. That would be cool. And if we don't have to explain it, right? We don't have to show what it is exactly. We don't have to necessarily connect it to things, but it's a nice ominous beginning, right? And then from there we cut to Círdan, with his thinking cap on and being worried. Well, they haven't built the final temple yet, Ellen. But anyway, whatever. We don't have to get into too much with Hildorian. We just show him Morgoth having some success over there. The Feanorians and the Blue Mountain Dwarves. Okay, somebody help me. Remind me of. I feel like I had a bunch of ideas for that, and we kind of decided to not do them. So I'm trying to remember which of the Feanorians we wanted to establish the tolls, right, and the dwarf trade through, and how Caranthir especially is going to enrich himself, and we wanted to introduce. Right, so Curufin and Caranthir meeting Telkar and establishing the trade route. Okay. All right, so they meet Telkar, and Curufin gets Angrist, right? Yes. Okay. Right. Caranthir alienates them. They trade with Curufin instead. Caranthir throws up a toll booth. Okay. Right. So we get some of that stuff going on. I'm thinking about how that works in the economy, in the narrative economy of this episode as a whole. It would be interesting to introduce this in the middle of Círdan's suspicions about the Feanorians, right? He learns the truth about the Feanorians, and he begins to suspect all kinds of dark thoughts about their motivations and what they're trying to do. Meanwhile, here's the Feanorians meeting the dwarves and, sort of exploiting that relationship. Yeah. And it's interesting because we don't even have to make it look sinister, right? We don't have to make it look like they're being evil with the dwarves, but it creates this air of suspicion on the viewer's part, right? As Círdan is going through his suspicion about the what the dark motivations of the Feanorians and the wicked things that they are willing to do, and then we just show, Curufin and Caranthir establishing relationships with the dwarves, and we're kind of wondering like, what is Curufin plotting? And yep. I think that can be made to work pretty well. See, Ellen, I'm now nervous to suggest Caranthir acting like a jerk because you guys all felt I was like overdoing Caranthir acting like a jerk. So I'm now like reluctant to even suggest Caranthir acting like a jerk. But I'm ready any day of the week for Caranthir to be acting like a jerk to people. That all seems fine to me. Explain more about the orcs and the sunlight and how that would work here. Is the goal basically to show that Gothmog is making warlike preparations so that we are sort of prepared to set the, we're preparing the audience for the fact that battle is coming before too long? Okay. Then maybe we just show that. Maybe, how about this? How about Gothmog is building up his armies, right, indoors, and we need to have someone for him to have a conversation with. But somebody is talking to Gothmog and basically asks him, like, okay, so how are you planning to deploy these armies of orcs, in the brilliant sunlight here, as they're all, they can't do the sunlight thing. Gothmog's response to that, I think, would be just essentially Bulldog. There you go. Great. We do have Bulldog available. Yeah. And Bulldog, of course, would be personally concerned as he's the sort of demigod of the orcs, right? Bulldog could be expressing some frustration, right? So he and Gothmog are on the same page. They're wanting to build up the army. They're wanting to get out there and like kill some elves already. This is like, their hobby and job, right? The orcs, at least, they're doing what they love. So but their career path is currently thwarted by the sun. So they're trying to figure out what to do with that. I think Gothmog, what I'm building to here is I think that Gothmog is confident in Morgoth, basically. Like, he doesn't know. He doesn't have a plan. But he believes that Morgoth is going to take care of it, right? And so he just kind of trusts in that. His job, he is sort of just building up the armies kind of in faith, right? That this is gonna work out. I don't see him as the experimental type, exactly. Nor do I think orcs doing like a sunshine training montage is necessarily what we're going to want to go for here either. Like elves or the orcs on indoor tanning beds and stuff to like slowly acclimate them to ultraviolet radiation. I don't know that we necessarily want to go there. But yeah, I think that he just is sort of confident that his armies will be needed when they are called upon and the opportunity will arise. Yeah. Okay, cool. No, and I think that's enough. Look at that. See how efficient we were with episode 6? No problem.
Not even running late.
Not even running later than usual. So, next time, June 7th, as we said, so that is 1 week from today, we shall return and we'll be discussing more creative content questions. So now keep in mind, we're gonna stick to the schedule, so we'll be back 3 weeks from next week, right? So we're just shifting the 2 weeks from now up 1 week. So we'll go Friday, June 7th. More creative content questions and being told to prepare particularly for the cast list and casting descriptions. We're going to go through some more of the casting. We talked, for instance, about the frame. We talked about some of the, what we're looking for in cast for the frame, and we're going to be doing a little bit more of that as we go through the rest of the as yet uncasted elves. So that's what's going to happen. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody. This was a really fun discussion. I was really happy with our Turgon discussion, actually. Really glad we started there. I feel like I've got a handle on Turgon's character a lot better now.
Yeah, I like the direction heading in.
Good.
Me too.
Good.
Both episodes, actually. Yep.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thanks everybody, and we will we'll see you guys in 1 week. Thanks, everybody.
How exciting. Coming around so fast.
Absolutely.
I know.
I will say, as always, thanks for listening, and Godspeed. Although the theoretical budget of our hypothetical blockbuster may be unlimited, the production budgets of this and the rest of our fun alternative educational projects are unfortunately not. If you have enjoyed joining our production team, please consider donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.